Okay, so let's start reading through this Rust book. So first here, the first one that I see in this Rust book is that it's kind of like an introduction, I guess. So the Rust programming language by Steve Klabnik and Carol Nichols, with contributors from the Rust community. Okay, so this version of the text assumes you are using Rust 1.61, released 2022, May 18th, or later. See the installation section of chapter 1 to install or update Rust. The HTML format is available online at here and offline with installations of Rust made with Rust up. Run. Okay, so this command, then I can open the Rust book offline. That's cool. And let's see what is different from what is different. Oh, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, not really different. But if I click it, just like over here. Quite like it, there is no stable here, but it's basically the same thing, I guess. Nothing changed. So yeah, so let's read through this. Several community translations are also available. The text is available in paperback and ebook format and no. Okay, so let's see what kind of translations it has. Okay, okay, so there are a lot of different. Yeah, it's cool. Oh, okay, that makes sense. So it supports the different versions too, different language versions. Okay, so and also I can read this book on the offline in the offline by using this Rust docs dash dash book command. Okay. So also the paper, there's an ebook and paperback. It's cool. And then okay, so let's move to the next one. So forward. It wasn't always so clear, but the Rust programming language is fundamentally about empowerment. No matter what kind of code you're writing now, Rust empowers you to reach farther. No matter what kind of code you're writing now, Rust empowers you to reach farther. To program with confidence in a wider variety of domains than you did before. Oh. So to reach farther, to program with confidence in a wider variety of domains than you did before. That's cool. So, but what is this empowerment? Meaning of this empowerment.
Empowerment.
Empowerment, so authority or power given to someone to do something. Okay, so it's like a power given to authority or power given to someone to do something. Okay, so it's just basically power was given. It's given to me. Okay, it's about empowerment. Fundamentally about empowerment. Power that is given to me. It wasn't so clear, but the Rust programming language is fundamentally about empowerment. It was so clear, but the Rust programming language is fundamentally about empowerment. So it's like a Rust language is like a power given to me to go to reach farther and to program with confidence in a wider variety of domains. Okay, that makes sense. So take, for example, systems level work that deals with low level details of memory management. Take, for example, system level work that deals with low-level details of memory management. So memory management here and system levels. So data representation, also data representation and concurrency. I don't know about concurrency well. Traditionally, this realm of programming is seen as arcane. Traditionally, this realm of programming is seen as arcane. Arcane. Arcane.
Arcane.
Arcane.
Arcane.
Such arcane. Arcane means understood by few, mysterious or secret. By few, mysterious or secret. Okay. So this realm of programming is seen as arcane. Arcane. Officially, the realm of programming is seen as arcane. I don't understand what this means, to be honest. Accessible only to a select few who have devoted the necessary years learning to avoid its infamous pitfalls. Pitfalls. Pitfall.
Pitfall.
Pitfall. So pitfall means a hidden or unsuspected danger or difficulty. A hidden or unsuspected danger. A hidden or unsuspected danger. Suspected danger. Okay. So avoid its infamous pitfalls. Oh, hidden danger, right? Hidden danger. Okay. So accessible only to a selected few who have devoted the necessary years learning to avoid its infamous pitfalls. Devoted the necessary years learning to avoid its infamous pitfalls. Avoid its infamous pitfalls. Its infamous pitfalls. And even those who practice it to do so with caution, lest their code be open to exploits, crashes, or corruption. Let's read this again. Quite difficult to me. Traditionally, this realm of programming is seen as arcane. Arcane, which is what was the meaning? Shit. Arcane understood by few. Yeah, arcane is secret. So traditionally, the realm of programming is seen as arcane, accessible only to a selective few who have devoted the necessary years learning to avoid its infamous pitfalls. Accessible only to a selective few who have devoted the necessary years learning to avoid its infamous pitfalls. Okay. And even those who practice it do so with caution, lest their code be open to exploits, crashes, or corruption. So this means basically like like even people who have learned programming really long time, like years, they understood things a lot to avoid it, like errors and bugs and issues in the programming language, but still their codes are exposed to the kind of dangerous things, like bugs and errors. I think it means that. And Rust breaks down these barriers. Rust breaks down these barriers by eliminating the old pitfalls, which is the hidden danger, eliminating hidden danger, and providing a friendly, polished set of tools to help you along the way. So Rust solves this issue that is like that the codes are exposed to the errors and bugs. Yeah. So Rust breaks down these barriers by eliminating all the old pitfalls and providing a friendly, polished set of tools to help you along the way. Programmers who need to deep down into lower level control can do so with Rust. Programmers who need to deep down into lower level control can do so with the Rust. To deep down into low level control can do so with Rust. Okay, so basically this means that programmers who wanna deal with the low level stuff, low level programming, how do I say that, they can eliminate the old peoples when they are doing the low level jobs. I think that's what it means. Without taking on the customary risk of crashes or security holes. Without taking on the customary risk or crashes or security holes. Oh, so without taking on the customary risk or crashes or security holes. Okay, so basically it's kind of repeating the phrases again and again, eliminating the dangerous points. Prevent it and protect the program. But what this means, customary. So customary here means according to the customs or usual practices. According to the customs or usual practices associated with a particular society, place, or set circumstances. According to the customs or usual practices associated with a particular society. Usual practices. Without taking on the usual practices risk. Customary risk of crashes. I don't know, this kind of difficult word for me. Customary risk of crashes or security holes. And without having to learn the fine points of a fickle toolchain. Oh my god, there are really difficult words that I never heard here. That's kind of distracting me to read this doc. So
Fickle.
So it means fickle, so it sounds fickle, and then changing frequently, especially as regarded one's loyalties and affections. So anyway, it's like a changing frequently. So fickle toolchain, it changes frequently, okay. And without having to learn the fine points of a fickle toolchain. Oh, okay. Better yet, the language is designed to guide you naturally towards reliable code that is efficient in terms of speed and memory usage. Better yet, the memory is designed to guide you naturally towards reliable code that is efficient in terms of speed and memory usage. So it means that the language is kind. Anyway, it's kind. And it helps it making my codes faster and about the memory. Okay, so programmers who were already working with low-level code can use Rust to raise their ambitions. That makes sense because it explained the above. And for example, introducing parallelism in Rust is a relatively low-risk operation. Parallelism? What is this? I don't know. A relatively low-risk operation. The compiler will catch the classical mistakes for you. The compiler will catch the classical mistakes for you. The compiler will catch the classical mistakes. The compiler will catch the classical mistakes for you. Okay, so compiler kind of supports me really strongly to prevent the mistake. And you can tackle more aggressive optimizations in your code with the confidence that you won't accidentally introduce crashes or vulnerabilities. So it kind of keeps arguing that Rust is really safe language compared to other languages. Yeah. But Rust isn't limited to low-level systems programming. It's expressive and ergonomic enough to make CLI apps, web servers, and many other kinds of code quite pleasant to write. You will find a simple example of both later in the book. Working with Rust allows you to build skills that transfer from one domain to another. Working with Rust allows you to build skills that transfer from one domain to another. You can learn Rust by writing a web app, then apply those same skills to target your Raspberry Pi. Okay, so it's because I think that things are kind of similar, how things works, because it's the same Rust language in different domains. That's what it means, I guess. This book fully embraces the potential of a Rust employer. This book fully embraces the potential of Rust to empower its users. Okay, so it means that the Rust book helps users to use Rust properly, I guess. And it's friendly and approachable. It's a friendly and approachable text intended to help you level up not just your knowledge of Rust, but also your reach and confidence as a programmer in general. So dive in, get ready to learn, and welcome to the Rust community. Nicholas Masakis and Aaron Turan. Okay, this was quite difficult to read this part, to be honest. So yeah. So anyway, this forward was literally forward, it kind of explains why it's good to learn Rust, why it's good to use Rust, like that. And it also explains that it's so good for low-level control, and a compiler does some job here, to protect the program crashes and stuff like that. But also it explains that if I learn Rust, then I can move to other domains quite easily, I guess. That's something benefit to learn this Rust programming language. So if I move to the next chapter, so it's introduction. And so note, the edition of the book is the same as the Rust programming language, available in print and ebook format, and no Stark Press. The edition of the book is the same as the Rust programming available in the print. Okay, so it's just introducing in the book. So welcome to the Rust programming language, an introductory book about Rust. The Rust programming language helps you write faster, more reliable software. Okay, so this was explained in the previous chapter. High-level ergonomics and low-level control are often at odds in programming language design. They are often at odds in programming language design, meaning that if I want to do low-level control things, then it's kind of against the high-level ergonomics, meaning that the language is quite difficult, I guess, difficult to use, something like that. So Rust challenges that conflict. But Rust challenges the conflict. So through balancing powerful technical capacity and a great developer experience, Rust gives you the option to control low-level details, such as memory usage, without all the hassle traditionally associated with such control. So it kind of explains that Rust is definitely like dealing with low-level details, but also it's not really like the traditional languages, like really difficult to understand or stuff like that, or like uncomfortable to use. But I need to search this word. Hassle.
hassle,
Hassle means irritating inconvenience, harass. Oh, irritating inconvenience is inconvenience. The hassle, all the hassle. Okay, so it makes sense. So it's better than the traditional old languages. It's kind of like an evolved one. Okay, so who Rust is for has better version, better language than the older languages. So who Rust is for? Rust is ideal for many people for a variety of reasons. So let's look at a few of the most important groups. Teams of developers. Rust is providing Rust is proving to be a productive tool for collaborating among large teams of developers with varying levels of systems programming knowledges. So teams of developers. Okay. So it's good for teams of developers, and Rust is providing to be a productive tool. Okay. And for collaborating among large teams of developers with varying levels of systems programming knowledges. Okay, so it means that the team, even though the team members have they have a different experience about different programming languages, but then also at the same time they have different levels, like they have different levels of knowledges, and but Rust provides something productive thing to solve these issues. Low-level code is prone. Prone? What does this mean? Prone. Prone. Likely or liable to suffer from, do, or experience something unpleasant or regrettable. Likely or reliable to suffer from. Likely or reliable to suffer from. Prone.
prone,
Prone.
prone, prone, prone,
Prone. Likely or liable to suffer from. Likely to suffer from do or experience something unpleasant or regrettable. Lying flat, especially face downwards, as lying prone or home. What? Likely or liable to suffer from. Low-level code is prone to a variety of subtle bugs. It's basically suffer from something bad. Suffer from something not good. So low-level code is prone to a variety of subtle bugs. So it's kind of painful, like a pain. Suffering from the subtle bugs. Low-level codes. Which in most other languages can be caught only through extensive testing and careful code review by experienced developers. In Rust, the compiler plays a gatekeeper role by refusing to compile code with these elusive bugs. including concurrency bugs. I don't know concurrency, but here elusive. What is this? Elusive.
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 Elusive. So difficult to find, catch, or achieve. Okay, difficult to find, catch, or achieve. Okay, so difficult to find. Elusive bugs, including concurrency bugs. By working alongside the compiler, the team can spend their time focusing on the program's logic rather than chasing down bugs. It makes sense. So compiler here again, compiler seems really strong in Rust. The compiler helps a lot, so thus even the programmers can focus on their programming logics. That's amazing. So Rust also brings contemporary developer tools to the systems programming world. Rust also brings contemporary developer tools. Contemporary developer tools to the systems programming world. Contemporary? What the hell? Contemporary.
Contemporary.
Contemporary. So contemporary means living or occurring at the same time. Occurring at the same time, living or occurring at the same time. Contemporary. Contemporary.
Contemporary.
And belonging to or occurring in the present. Living or occurring at the same time. The event was recorded by a contemporary historian. Living or occurring at the same time. Okay. So Rust also brings contemporary developer tools to the systems programming world. Cargo, the included dependency manager and build tool. Cargo. The included dependency manager and build tool makes adding, compiling, and managing dependencies painless and consistent across the Rust ecosystem. Rust FMT ensures a consistent coding style across developers. Rust FMT ensures a consistent coding style across developer. The Rust language server powers integrated development environment, integration for code completion, and line error messages. So the Rust language server powers IDE integration for coding completion and line error messages. Okay. So by using these and other tools in the Rust ecosystem, developers can be productive while writing the system level code. Okay. So students, Rust is for students and those who are interested in learning about system concepts. Using Rust, many people have learned about topics like operating system development. The community is very welcoming and happy to answer student questions. Through efforts such as this book, the Rust teams want to make systems concept more accessible to more people, especially those new to programming. Through efforts such as this book, the Rust teams want to make systems concept more accessible to more people, especially those new to programming. Okay. So companies, hundreds of companies, large and small, use Rust in production for a variety of tasks. Those tasks include command line tools, web services, DevOps tooling, embedded system devices, audio and video analysis and transcoding, cryptocurrencies, bioinformatics, search engines, Internet of Things applications, machine learning, and even major parts of the Firefox web browser. Oh, major parts of the Firefox web browser, interesting. So open source developers, Rust is for people who want to build the Rust programming language, community developer tools and libraries. We'd love to have you contribute to the Rust language. Rust is for people who want to build the Rust programming language, community developer tools and libraries. we'd love to have you contribute to the Rust language. Okay, so people who value speed and stability. Rust is for people who crave speed and stability in a language. By speed, we mean the speed of the programs that you can create with Rust and the speed at which Rust lets you write down. Speed at which Rust lets you write down. The Rust compilers checks ensure stability through feature additions and refactoring. The Rust compiler's checks ensure stability through feature additions and refactoring. This is in contrast to the brittle legacy code in languages without these checks. What is brittle? Brittle. So hard but liable to break easily. Okay. So this is in contrast to the brittle legacy code in languages without these checks. It's code in languages without these checks. Which developers are often afraid to modify. Hard to break easily. So meaning that these legacy codes are like difficult to understand, but like it can break things easily. Like it can break program things easily, I guess. Which developers are often afraid to modify. That makes sense. So meaning that in other programming languages, there is no compiler checks to ensure the stability about the codes, but Rust is supported. That's what it means, I guess. So it means that the developers are maybe less afraid to modify the Rust code, even though it is legacy code if it's in Rust. By striving for zero cost abstractions. What is this? Zero cost abstractions. Higher level features that compile to lower level code as fast as code written manually. Rust endeavors to make safe code be fast code as well. Higher level features that compile to low level code as fast as code written manually. Rust endeavors to make a safe code be fast code as well. Okay. So it's kind of arguing that Rust is fast and also at the same time just safe. So the Rust language hopes to support many other users as well. Those mentioned here are merely some of the biggest stakeholders. Overall, Rust's greatest ambition is to eliminate the trade-offs that programmers have accepted for decades by providing safety and productivity, speed and ergonomics. Give Rust a try and see if its choices work for you. Who this book is for? This book assumes that you've written code in another programming language. So it's like already. This book is for the people who already quite know other languages, programming languages, but doesn't make any assumptions about which one. We've tried to make the mental material. We've tried to make the material broadly accessible to those from a wide variety of programming backgrounds. We don't spend a lot of time talking about what programming is or how to think about it. If you are entirely new to programming, you would be better served by reading a book that specifically provides an introduction to programming. How to use this book? In general, this book assumes that you are reading it in sequence from front to back. Later chapters build on concepts in earlier chapters, and earlier chapters might not delve into details on a topic. We typically revisit the topic in a later chapter. In general, this book assumes that you're reading it in sequence from the front to the back. Later chapters build on concepts in early chapters. And earlier chapters might not delve into details on a topic. We typically revisit the topic in a later chapter. Okay, makes sense. But what is delve? Delve means reach inside or receptacle and search for something. Dig. Delve into details on a topic. So it's like a dig into details. You will find two kinds of chapters in this book: concept chapters and project chapters. Oh, okay, so there are two types of chapters: concept chapter and project chapters. In concept chapter, you will learn about aspect of Rust. You will learn about aspect of Rust. In project chapters, we will build small programs together, applying what you learned so far. Chapters 2, 12, and 20 are project chapters. The rest are concept chapters. Chapter 1 explains how to install Rust, how to write Hello World program, and how to use Cargo, Rust's package manager and build tool. Chapter 2 is hands-on introduction to the Rust language. Here we cover concepts at a high level, and later chapters will provide additional detail. The first is kind of like a concepts are at high level, but later chapters it will be more detailed, low level. And if you wanna get your hands dirty right away, chapter 2 is a place for that. At first, you might even wanna skip chapter 3, which covers Rust features similar to those of other programming languages, and head straight to chapter 4 to learn about Rust's ownership system. However, if you are a particularly meticulous learner who prefers to learn every detail before moving on to the next, you might want to skip chapter 2 and go straight to chapter 3, returning to chapter 2. And you do like to work on a project applying the details you learned. Makes sense. So skip chapter 2 and then go straight to chapter 3 and then return to chapter 2. Chapter 5 discusses structures and methods, and chapter 6 covers enums. Chapter 5 discusses structures and methods, and chapter 6 covers enums and match expressions and if let control flow construct. You will use structures and enums to make custom types in Rust. In chapter 7, you will learn about Rust's module system and about privacy rules for organizing your code and its public application programming interface. In chapter 7, you will learn about Rust's module system and about privacy rules for organizing your code and its public application programming interface. Okay. So chapter 8 discusses some common collection data structures that the standard library provides, such as vectors, strings, and hash maps. Chapter 9 explores Rust's error handling philosophy and techniques. Chapter 10 digs into generics, traits, and lifetimes, which give you the power to define the code that applies to multiple types. Chapter 10 digs into generics, traits, and lifetimes, which give you the power to define the code. Which give you the power to define the code. Which give you the power to define code that applies to multiple types. They give me the power to define code that applies to multiple types. So these apply to multiple types. I can write codes with them that apply to multiple types. So chapter 11 is all about testing, which even with Rust's safety guarantees. Chapter 11 is about testing, testing, which even with Rust's safety guarantees is necessary to ensure your program's logic is correct. Which even with Rust's safety guarantees is necessary to ensure your program's logic is correct. In chapter 12, we will build our own implementation of the subset of functionality from the grep command line tool that searches for text within files. For this, we will use many of the concepts we discussed in the previous chapters. Chapter 13 explores closures and iterators, the features of Rust that come from functional programming languages. In chapter 14, we will examine Cargo in more depth and talk about best practices for sharing your libraries with others. Chapter 13 explores closures and iterators, features of Rust that come from functional programming languages. In chapter 14, we will examine Cargo in more depth and talk about best practices for sharing your libraries with others. Chapter 15 discusses the smart pointers that the standard library provides and the traits that enable their functionality. In chapter 16, we will walk through different models of concurrent programming and talk about how Rust helps you to program in multiple threads fearlessly. Chapter 17 looks at how Rust idioms compare to object-oriented programming principles you might be familiar with. In chapter 16, we will walk through different models of concurrent programming and talk about how Rust helps you to program in multiple threads fearlessly. Chapter 17 looks at how Rust idioms compare to object-oriented programming principles you might be familiar with. Chapter 18 is a reference on patterns and pattern matching, which are powerful ways of expressing ideas throughout Rust programs. Chapter 19 contains a smorgasbord of advanced topics of interest, including unsafe Rust macros and more about lifetimes, traits, types, functions, and closures. In chapter 20, we will complete a project in which we will implement a low-level multi-threaded web server. Finally, some appendices contain useful information about the language in a more reference-like format. Appendix A covers. Okay, Appendix A. So finally, some appendices contain useful information about the language in a more reference-like format. Appendix A covers Rust's keywords. Appendix B covers Rust's operators and symbols. Appendix C covers derivable traits provided by the standard library. Appendix D covers some useful development tools, and Appendix E explains Rust editions. There is no wrong way to read this book. If you wanna skip ahead, go for it. You might have to jump back to earlier chapters if you experience any confusion, but do whatever works for you. An important part of the process of learning Rust is learning how to read the error messages the compiler displays. An important part of the process of learning Rust is learning how to read the error messages the compiler displays. These will guide you toward the working code. As such, we will provide many examples that don't compile along with the error message the compiler will show you in each situation. Know that if you enter the random example, it may not compile. Make sure you read the surrounding text to see whether the example you are trying to run is mean to error. Fairies will also help you distinguish code that isn't meant to work. Oh, so this is called fairy. This code does not compile. This code panics. This code does not produce. Know that if you enter and run a random example, know that if you enter and run, know that if you enter and run random example, it may not compile. If you enter and run a random example, it may not compile. Make sure you read the surrounding text to see whether the example you are trying to run is meant to error. Fairies will also help you distinguish it is meant to work. In most situations, we will lead you to the correct version of any code that doesn't compile. Source code. The source files from which this book is generated can be found on GitHub. Getting started. Let's start your Rust journey. There's a lot to learn, but every journey starts from here. In this chapter, we will discuss Let's start your Rust journey. There's a lot to learn, but every journey starts from here. In this chapter, we will discuss installing Rust on Linux, Mac OS, or different operating system, and writing a program that prints hello world. Using Cargo, which is a build tool and stuff like that, and Rust's package manager and build system. Yeah, using Cargo, Rust's package manager and build system. Installation. So the first step is to install Rust. We will download the Rust through RustUp, a command line tool for managing Rust versions and associated tools. So RustUp is a command line tool for Rust. You will need an internet connection for the download. Note, if you prefer not to use RustUp for some reason, please see the other Rust installation methods passage for more options. So basically, RustUp is something that I start with when I start learning Rust. practically. It's like a set up the Rust environment things like on my computer. The following steps: install the latest stable version of the Rust compiler. Rust stability guarantees ensure that all the examples in the book that compile will continue to compile with newer Rust versions. The output might differ slightly between versions, because Rust often improves error messages and warnings. In other words, any new or stable version of Rust you install using these steps should work as expected with the content of this book. Command line notation. In this chapter and throughout the book, we will show some commands used in the terminal. Lines that you should enter in a terminal all start with a dollar symbol. Wait a second. Command line. In this chapter and throughout the book, we will show some commands used in the terminal. Lines that you could enter in the terminal will all start with dollars. You don't need to type in the dollar characters. It's the command line prompt shown to indicate the start of each command. Lines that don't start with dollars typically show the output of the previous command. Additionally, PowerShell specific example will be used this and rather than dollars. So installing Rust sub on Linux, so blah blah like so installing through them, different things. And for Windows, I should visit this install website and install Rust up. And these are the things that I need to have. So you're troubleshooting to check whether you have Rust installed correctly. Open a shell and enter this line, Rust dash version. You should see the version number, commit hash, and commit date for the latest stated version that has been released in the following format. So this is the version number. What? That's a version number, and this is a commit hash and commit date for the latest stable version. Okay, so version number, commit hash, commit date. If you see this information, you have installed Rust successfully. If you don't see this information and you are on Windows, check the Rust is in your passive system available. If that's all correct and Rust is still isn't working, there are a number of places you can get help. The easiest is the beginners channel on the official Discord channel server. There you can chat with other Rustaceans, a silly nickname we call ourselves, who can help you out. Other great resources include the users forum and Stack Overflow. Updating and uninstalling. Once Rust is installed via Rust up, when a new version of Rust is released, updating to the latest version is easy. From your shell, run the following update script. Rust sub update. To uninstall, so updating. Once Rust is installed via Rust sub, when a new version of Rust is released, updating to the latest version is easy. From your shell, just run. To install Rust and Rust up, run the following uninstall script from your shell. Rust up self uninstall. Local documentation. The installation of Rust also includes a local copy of documentation. So if I install the Rust through the Rust up installer, then I have also local copy of documentation in my computer. So you can read it offline. So run the Rust up doc to open the local documentation in your browser. Anytime a type or function is provided by the standard library and you are not sure what it does or how to use it, use the application programming interface documentation to find out. Okay. So it's a hello world.